Well, thank you so much, Judge Myers, for that generous introduction. Thank you for inviting me here today. I was invited to talk to you today about the future of legal education. And I was thinking, wow, if it had been 10 years ago and I was talking about the future of education, legal education, I would say it was dismal. Because 10 years ago, we were coming out of the Great Recession. There were no jobs. Students were not applying to law schools. And we were all having to re-examine the enterprise. But today, thankfully, the horizon looks brighter. I wouldn't say that we've returned to the salad days. When I was in law school, the salad days of 20 plus summer associates, the dream night programs that they had because they were really courting young associates to come to law firms. We're not going back to that. But applications are up since 2016, and legal education is continuing to evolve, responding to post-recession economic realities, as well as long-standing concerns about students being practice ready. In fact, as I was preparing for this talk, I learned that there have been debates in the academy about whether law schools are appropriately preparing law students for practice since the 19th century. When good old Christopher Columbus Langdell came up with the case method, some people thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. Teaching people to think like lawyers is ridiculous. Teach them to be lawyers. So this is a long-standing disagreement in the legal academy. In any event, and on top of everything else, we have a changing legal landscape. So, excuse me, the challenge that law schools are confronting, as I see it, at least for my 10 minutes today, is the following. One, how to provide first-rate education that prepares students for practice, how to do that in a way that is fiscally sustainable. What's the role of law schools in a time in which the legal service providers are changing? And then finally, with all the changes that are occurring, is law school even relevant? Which I think is fitting in this mentorship lunch you're probably going to hear from, and probably have heard from young people. Should I go to law school? Yes. Okay, so starting first, providing a first-rate education for students, preparing students for practice. In this regard, experiential learning, not a new thing, but it is a primary strategy. Many schools like ours require students to engage in a clinic or an externship in order to graduate. And we've heard from our alums that having that type of experience really did help them in practice. So it's not just a gut feeling, we are actually seeing that that's helping students to get ready for practice. In addition, the ABA now requires law schools to engage in ongoing assessments to gauge student progress. So you'll be happy to know that we are very much discouraged from relying on one high-stakes test at the end of a semester. I remember how stress-inducing that was? I mean, when I was in law school, my civil procedure exam was at the end of the year. It was a year-long class, and it was one test at the end of the year. Thankfully, we've moved beyond that. We recognize that pedagogy suggests, better pedagogy suggests that we need to check in with students before the high-stakes test to make sure that they're learning what we want them to learn, and then give them opportunities to do things other than write an issue spotting exam, quizzes, writing exercises. There's much more emphasis in putting writing into the doctrinal courses, so it's not just reserved for legal writing and research. Professors are also using problems in class. So they're using problems that are based in real life, so students get a chance to apply what they're learning so they can see the law in action. Law feels more concrete. And more of that, I suggest, will be happening in the future. We have to prepare our students, and we know this, that they have to have skills that are transferable. And I think that's when we understand what it means to be practice ready. Because let's face it, the law is ever changing. So you need to be able to write well, you need to have sound analytical skills, but you also need soft skills like emotional intelligence and working across cultures, among other things. And these are some of the skills that we're seeking to impart upon our students as well. And students are eager, for their part, they're eager to get those soft skills and to have skills that enable them to hit the ground running, because more and more of the students coming to law schools these days are looking to make a difference. They are recognizing, I think maybe this is sort of the silver lining in the crash, so to speak, the loss of jobs in big law, instead of students coming to law school because they want to make a lot of money, they want to make a difference. They want to have an impact. And so, predictably, many of them are going to want to work in public interest settings or the government, but students who are also going into corporate law or corporations, they see those fields as ones in which they can make a difference as well. And so that's very much their orientation, which I think is a really wonderful thing. Turning to making law school fiscally sustainable. Now, the strategy many law schools, including ours, have employed mostly to get students to come is money. Money. We call them scholarships, but it's discounting our tuition. And as a result, even though we get students to come, we are falling short in terms of our net tuition. Now, that's a problem because we rely on tuition to cover our expenses. In addition, think about the context in which we operate. States are providing less and less money to educational institutions. And for us at UC Law School, 13% of our budget comes from the state government. So we've got to be very creative, resourceful, and you name it, to make up the money to support our enterprise. And so, what do we do about that? Well, one thing we've learned, even though the JD applications are up, we cannot depend on the JD anymore. We just can't. We have to think about educating other learners. And so we started out with the Llm program. Our Llm program provides a legal education to foreign trained lawyers. So for a year they come, they learn about the U.S. legal system, and most of them go back, but some of them stay here or they go teach. So that's been a successful program for us. But other law schools have come up with master's programs. These are programs that are designed to help people who are professionals in fields where they use the law, but they don't necessarily have to have a JD. We are in the process of developing an online master's program that will serve people who are in compliance or HR or legal operations, for example. We also are we and other schools are looking at the bachelor's degree. There are a couple of schools that do have a bachelor's major in the law. We are in the process of building something like that with the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. We already have a Law and Society program. It's a certificate program, and we have professors that are teaching in that program. But this is another way of spreading the benefit of a legal education, if you will, and also creating a pipeline. So these are some other another strategy. And we are creating other pipelines to law schools through 3+3 programs. A 3+3 program basically means a student can get her bachelor's and her law degree in 6 years instead of 7. So the first year of law school counts as the 4th year of the baccalaureate degree. And we've partnered with I should have written it down because I won't remember. And it's not because I don't love those schools. I deeply, deeply do. I just can't pull it now. I can't access. It's like my brain is going buffering. But we've got these programs, and these are terrific programs, and it helps with the cost. So instead of having to pay for 7 years of school, it's just 6 years. So these are some of the ways that we're looking at making sure that the law school is fiscally sustainable, and we're not alone in this regard. Law schools across the country, with the exception of likely the very top 14 schools, are engaging in these strategies. What about how to function in a world where lawyers don't necessarily have a monopoly on practice? In Washington State, for example, that's the first state to create a limited license legal technician position. So these folks, they can practice. They can assist litigants. It's a strategy that Washington is turning to address the access to justice problem. As some of you may know, 86% of legal needs go unmet. And so Washington's the first state to try this limited license legal technician strategy. Oregon and Utah also are looking at something along those lines to address the problem. And then in other places there are things like court navigators. These are people designed to help litigants. There also are alternative legal service providers. You all may be familiar with that. These are businesses that are basically doing what big law firms used to do in terms of managing litigation, document review, legal research, and the like. For us, these are new places for our students to get jobs. So instead of freaking out that there aren't big summer programs anymore and guaranteed placements in big law firms, there are now different places for students to get jobs, including the Alternative Legal Services Program. With regard to the positions like limited license legal technician, I think those kinds of positions would be amenable. We have to ask the question, how do you train those people? What is the training that is necessary? I've seen already that the Law School Admissions Council is looking at what types of assessment would be appropriate for figuring out how to admit people into those programs. And I would suggest that law schools are the appropriate places to train those people. And so that may be another audience or another market for us to educate. And again, these people, maybe they're getting a master's or a certificate program. I mean, that's something to stay tuned and look for. The other thing that I'm seeing, I think we have to be prepared to help our alumni in different ways. With the legal market changing, with different types of avenues for practicing available, lawyers will probably be changing jobs even more than they already do. I mean, when I was coming up, I heard that lawyers change jobs on average like 8 times. I think that is going to continue. And so I see the law school as being sort of a home base, sort of a cradle to grave. Maybe that's not the best analogy. But we are there to help advise people who are thinking about going to law school. Obviously, we're preparing our students who are getting their JD. And then we can help them once they've graduated, keeping them abreast of the latest developments in the legal practice world, helping them get whatever additional training they might need to go into a new field, and the like. So finally then, is law school relevant? Well, as I said at the beginning, yes, 1,000 times yes. I mean, all you have to do, in my opinion, just look around. I mean, we're living in a time when there are real serious questions about rule of law, about the role of government, about civic engagement. I mean, we live in a time when people think that Judge Judy is on the U.S. Supreme Court. Law schools have something to say about civic engagement. Law schools can engage with people and help them understand how the system works. The other thing about law schools, our trade is in discussing issues, difficult issues, with nuance. We can set an example about how to talk about difficult issues in a way in which the parties may disagree, but they're not disagreeable. This is something I think law schools can be taking the lead on. The other thing is that if we look around our society, we can see any number of measures of inequity and lack of access to law. I already mentioned that 86% of legal needs go unmet. Law schools, I think, can play a role in that problem as well. And here I'm thinking about law schools across the country have programs, either there are incubator programs that can help junior attorneys set up practices designed to help represent people in their communities. With moving from incubator, where they're just providing resources like an office and computer and sort of things of that nature, to actually staffing a law firm. And that's something that we are in the process of building at our College of Law. What we would like to create is a law firm that would represent people of modest means, people who earn too much to qualify for legal aid, but not enough to afford an attorney. The benefit of this kind of firm is that we are providing an important service to our community, but we are also providing training to junior attorneys, people who are out of law school 1 or 2 years. They would come, they could do what we would call a fellowship or apprenticeship at our law firm, get training on representing people in these important issues like matters like eviction or dealing with debtor-creditor matters, and then they can go off and build their practice themselves. So we could be in the game of building up a cadre of attorneys that represent people with their day-to-day problems. And these are, in the past, I think some people have eschewed those opportunities, thinking that they're not very sophisticated matters, but they're very sophisticated and they are desperately needed. And I think, law schools should be playing a role in addressing that issue. And particularly here in Hamilton County, because we know from the Help Center, which we are a partner with at the Hamilton County Municipal Court, that 98% of matters dealing with evictions and debt collection go unrepresented. And when you think about the stakes in those kinds of cases, you should be pretty alarmed. I know I am. So I think that, you know, the landscape of law has changed a lot from the time that I went to law school. I remember getting my letter from Harvard Law School. I'm thinking, man, I got it made. You know, my future is set. I'm never going to have a problem in my career. You know, and there were so many steps, and you knew what steps to take. It's not like that now, but I think that's, you know, there's a benefit to that as well. There are many more opportunities, many ways of practicing law, and there's no doubt in my mind that law remains as relevant as ever, as complex as ever, and presents as great an opportunity to engage in something that is not only engaging for your mind, but also beneficial to society. And so I can't help myself. I'm a law dean. Go to law school. That's it. That's my talk.